Howdy YouTube family, it's Bolt SRNA coming to you again with another day's topic. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about substance abuse and anesthesia. It's pretty common. The statistic is 1 out of 10 anesthesia providers will end up abusing alcohol or drugs at some point during their career. That's a very high statistic, so I figured we could get into it today. I didn't really know about this statistic and how high the prevalence is for people in anesthesia abusing drugs until I got into my program. I was lucky enough in my program that we had a class called Professional Aspects that we took our first semester, and it introduced us to the field and it introduced a lot of professional type issues, malpractice claims, drug abuse, things like that. So we watched a video called Wearing Masks, which I recommend to any of you guys looking to go into anesthesia. Check out the film called Wearing Masks. You can probably Google it on YouTube and find it. And if I do see it, I'll try and link it somewhere in the description below so you can watch it. But it's from like the 80s or the early 90s, and it's a kind of a documentary story talking about an anesthesiologist and his family and how he had a like kind of a slow decline from being a really successful, either he was in residency or a brand new graduated physician who was starting to use drugs, and how it slowly kind of destroyed his family and destroyed his life. And I think he may have died in the end. I'm not sure on that one, but his outcome was not positive at the end of the film. And then you can start doing some research and you'll find out there's some pretty well-known CRNAs that also dealt with drug abuse. More recently now, there was a podcast series that's came out that's really popular called Dirty John. I recommend you guys check that out. I'll try and link it in the description too if I can find a link for it for you. But it's about a guy, now he was more like a sociopath to begin with. He just happened to, I think he was gonna go to law school, and then he dropped out of law school, and then he switched into nursing, and then picked CRNA, and apparently he was a really smart guy and really, handsome and charismatic, and people liked him, and did well in life, but he was a sociopath, kind of like Ted Bundy type character. And he ended up becoming a CRNA that ended up stealing drugs and attacking women and kind of like hunting women and stuff. It's pretty interesting podcast, but that's a little of an extreme story there. He is not the typical person that abuses drugs. He was an extreme. But anyway, there's lots of stories, if you look it up, about people in anesthesia who end up abusing substances. So I had some people ask me here recently, people in nursing school or who are nurses who are hoping to do CRNA. They've asked me if I've struggled with substances in the past, or I used to have a really hard time with alcohol, or I have used prescription pills before, and or marijuana, or whatever it is that's been your vice. Any substance really at all that you've been attached to, that you've had what you feel like might be addictive type behaviors with. I've had some of those people contact me and ask me like, hey, is this field going to be okay for me? If they look this up on my record during my application, will they turn me away? If I do get through and they don't ding me for that stuff, am I going to be at risk for falling back into something that I don't want to be involved in again because of the field? And the answer is probably yes. This kind of field is really prone to push you and stress you out with a lot of responsibility, and I think that's where you get so much of the substance abuse. You have a lot of stress on your hands, and it's your responsibility every day, all the time, to put somebody deep asleep and not let them expire, but also get them back when the surgery is over. And you do this every day, all day, and it's a lot of stress on your shoulders. And you have drugs on your hands that are the most powerful in the world, pretty much. You've got drugs that are multiple times more powerful than anything you're going to find on the streets. You have sufentanil and things like that. That honestly, as an anesthesia provider, you have some checks and balances that keep you in line so that you can't just steal stuff easily. But ultimately, if you're intelligent, you can divert your patient's drugs in anesthesia if you want to, and you can probably get away with it for a while. Usually people find out or you get caught. Usually you get caught because the anesthesia provider is falling asleep at the head of the bed during the surgery, or they're taking long bathroom breaks and they're acting suspicious. Their behavior changes. A lot of people in anesthesia will tell you that they personally know a friend or a coworker who did use substances and did end up either dying or losing their license. So it's pretty tragic outcomes for people who do fall into this. So personally, if I had to give any advice to anybody who feels like they have an addictive personality in any kind of way, I would recommend them to stay away from the field altogether. I know it seems harsh, and I know it might seem like your dream to do anesthesia, but if you have that kind of trouble and you know that you have struggled with things like that in the past, even if you're kind of free of it now and you're on the straight and narrow now, it's putting a lot of temptation on your shoulders to fall back into something again that you maybe have gotten free of in the past. Because you will watch your patient, you will push hardcore drugs on them every day, and you'll watch your patient suddenly just relax, and they'll go to sleep, and they'll be having a great dream, and then they'll wake up and they'll have been cut from here to here, and they'll say, "Is it over? Are we going back for surgery now?" It's kind of crazy to watch your patient have like completely been out, and you gave them something that was so helpful to them that they didn't even know they were cut from here to here, and their stuff insides removed and massive surgery. So you might start to think that if you just tried a little bit of that, your divorce that you had last month might not hurt as much. Or and that's usually what gets it going, is something in your personal life starts to really push your boundaries and what you're able to cope with. A death of a child, or we were told the cautionary tale of 2 CRNAs that lived not too far from the area that I go to school in, and it was a husband and wife, and the wife had it was either a miscarriage or the child was born but died soon after, something tragic like that. And the husband came home one day and found her with a sevoflurane bottle and a face mask attached to it, and she was just doing 100% Sevo and inhaling it, which will kill you, and very quickly. And so then he was so distraught by seeing her in that position, he then killed himself as well through the same method. So I mean, this kind of stuff with anesthesia that you do, there's a dark side to it, and not to be dramatic, but there's a dark side, and you will, if you investigate stories and stuff, you will find plenty of people who have used these substances to harm themselves. So anyway, not to be a downer, but if that is anything that you struggle with, and you at any point think that you might have used in the past, or could see yourself using in the future, or even possibly find yourself like on prescription pills now that you take often, opiates and things like that, anxiolytics and stuff, you should highly, highly think twice about going into this field, because it could push you into a situation where you make a choice you don't want to make, and it could destroy your life or your family's life, and it has so many others. If you're already in SRNA or CRNA, I know that the AANA has resources on their website for people who are struggling right now with substance abuse, and there's lots of videos and hotlines and things like that, and they want to work with people to make sure that they get you out of that kind of mindset, and hopefully back to being able to do the job that you need to do. They're not going to just write you off and say you're out of the field and don't ever come back kind of thing. There are plenty of stories of people who have fallen to that side, and then they've done rehab and stuff, and they've come back. And there are certain areas that you can work in anesthesia that where you have not quite as much access to as powerful of drugs, and a little bit more regulation, so that you kind of have some more checks and balances to keep you from diverting if that might cross your mind. But they're not, it kind of restricts you, so I'm not recommending to go in those areas. But but they're out there if you need them. And I know the ASA also has resources for anesthesiologists who also deal with the same problem. So those things are out there. I'll try and link some of those resources for you in the description if you're interested. But ultimately, this was just a story to talk about substance abuse is a real issue in anesthesia. It's something that not a lot of people talk about unless you're in the field already and then you know about it. You probably have a coworker or whoever that ends up being one of these abusers, so you know about it personally. I hope that this was helpful to you guys. If you have any questions about substance abuse or you want to hear more about something, stories or anything about this, you let me know and I'll try and help you out. And if you're personally dealing with it, you can private message me and I can try and help you out and point you in the right direction of what you should do and resources that may be able to help you. So anyway, until next time, bolt out.